Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk in between some similarities and differences in between last month uncollected Nameless Thanos fight and the fight that we have in 626 as the final fight against the champion. What are the similarities, what are the differences, why I think one of them was extremely well designed and why I think one of them has failed us miserably. And it's not going to be a secret, I have said it in past that I absolutely love Nameless Thanos fight. And if you take these two fights apart, they are really similar. So both of them were like kind of Power Stone champions with 3 different phases, 3 different effects, 3 new abilities, kind of like that these champions did not have before. We had like the initial few percent where we could kind of like amp up and like get into the fight, and then we had to deal with phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 was trickiest. And in case of Nameless Thanos, it was the fact that we needed to disable his basically a shield without special attack, and he was gaining power constantly, and we needed to work in that kind of compounds there. And then phase 2 obviously was inverted controls, which we were able to remove, and phase 3 was the fact that he went unstoppable. We had to intercept him in order to remove that unstoppable, and then there was a whole armor break mechanic where he also was indestructible, and we had like a very specific way how we can finish off that fight when we intercept basically. And the champion fight is extremely similar to that. We also have 3 different phases, his abilities vary, and the last phase is also extremely similar in the sense that we need to perform extremely kind of specific action multiple times in order to do any damage at all. So in essence, both of those fights could be roadblocks where we had to play well enough in order to get the job done. But obviously this champion fight is that Nameless Thanos fight amped up to 11, and that in itself would not be the biggest problem. But I think the key differences in between those fights, and that is what we're going to go over. So first of all, I think Nameless Thanos fight was much more well received as a fight itself. Whether it should have been an uncollected quest or not, that's a different discussion. I don't think so. I think it should have been like a separate event or something. But why the fight was so much better received, number one and first reason was that it was 9 energy to get to that fight. In Nameless Thanos fight, we did not have any path before that. Like we can see here, the shortest path leading to champion is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fights of like 35k PI opponents, massive attacks, and they are not easy fights. There's like Hyperion, Iceman, Magic, Void, so many tricky fights together in the first place. Whereas against Nameless Thanos, we could just waltz up to the fight, try our best, throw our champions at him. We did not have to first of all factor in any other champions to get to him, so we could dedicate entire team just for that specifically. Now in Act 6, it's complete opposite. We have to, at the very kind of minimal case, ignoring all the other class path and class gates and everything else, which is also not easy, and we have to deal with Hyperion, so we ideally need some power control. Then there's Iceman, that's a lot of damage. Blade, we can outfight that fight. Magic on power gain, so we need an answer to Magic. Void, that's also not an easy fight. And Gladiator Hulk on what is that node when he goes unstoppable, that's also a hard fight. So basically we need to already kind of take specific answers to these champions, and that does not leave all that much room for the champion fight. So there is where Thanos fight was much better, just because it was 9 energy, there were no fights prior to that, and we could focus on the Thanos, on the boss, and take entire teams, take entire synergies, work what's out, work what's best, practice, and that didn't feel tedious. Nowhere close to as tedious as this has been, at least. Because yeah, if we have all these fights to get to him at the very least, and then afterwards once you start exploring, you need 4 6 stars or 4 science or 4 skill or 4 mystic. That's just crazy. But yeah, so also the nodes that go to the champion, like no retreat, that's definitely a painful touch in the face there. There are not too many champions that can answer that. But yeah, anyway, so I'm getting ahead of myself. So I think that's one kind of like huge important piece. Like in 626, if they wanted to add a fight like the champion, and if they wanted to keep their gates and stuff like that, they should have had like 1 to 2 fights prior to champion max. Like it either should have been where the champion is the only fight on the map, or maybe he has like 6-7 fights to him with like 1 or 2 fights before them, because then we would actually feel like it's not too big of a deal. If we fail, we can back out, go back in. But now when we get there, nobody wants to kind of waste half an hour of their lives just to redo the path to get back up there to try again, right? So what people do then, because people by nature are typically lazy, right? And they just spend units, right? They're not gonna quit, redo the path, and try again. Against Thanos, of course, there was absolutely no reason not to do that. There's no reason kind of like not to practice, go out and like kind of try and improve yourself. And you actually have that feeling of improvement. Against the champion, yeah, no, everybody who gets there typically drops. If they can't, let's say they can't get that fight down, they waste all their resources, they waste all their units. Then if they can't get it done, then they back up, right? At least many of the people. But yeah, so that is another key difference. And second key difference is that Nameless Thanos fight, you could do it with pretty much any champion. There were matchups that were easier, there were matchups that were harder. Like for section 1, anything with power gain essentially was really useful. It helped to deal with all. But champions without power gain could do that. It was just a bit trickier. Section 2, anything with damage over time debuffs against Thanos was great help. Other than that, any champion can do that section, so long as you were playing well enough. And section 3, literally any champion in game could do that. There's like no questions asked. There was nothing special, nothing specific about that fight. It was just you and like the target, the mission that Kabam gave you to intercept him, to build the armor up, armor breaks, and have at him. In essence, that was a skill-based fight where any champion can do that fight. Obviously, they would have to be ranked up appropriately, so on and so forth. Against the champion boss, not so much. All that region, all that unstoppable, it's very specific fight. Basically, you need either Quake or She-Hulk or one of the mystic champions that nullify a lot and like crazy and reliably, like Voodoo, Morningstar, Hood, Symbiote Supreme, and something extremely specific. So there are like, what, 7, 8, maybe 9 good options against this fight, and that is extremely champion specific fight. And then again, like last 10% is another different story. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So champion fails in terms of how specific it is. The fact that it has to be only 5 and 6 star champions in here. And many people don't have these counters, because like Symbiote Supreme is like extremely specific. Thank God we have She-Hulk, so at least that opened a lot more doors, a lot more options for this fight, because She-Hulk is an older champion that many people have. But like Symbiote Supreme is not all that common, for instance. But yeah, so again, Nameless Thanos, easy to get to, and any champion could do that fight. The champion, you have a long path before him, and it's a very champion specific fight. And now, like another extremely important piece of annoying bit in the champion fight is his crazy region, because against Nameless Thanos, at least, any damage you kind of dealt to him felt like you're making headway, right? Because he did not have any kind of like these insane regions where you basically could end up worse than you started the fight off, like by the time you finish it. So the regions that definitely should have been nerfed. I don't think that fights like this should have as strong of a region, because that's just another extremely specific thing to deal with, and to be able to damage it or deal with it. And what's even more annoying is that region gets even stronger the more damage you do. So quite often you're just kind of like rewarded of going in, dealing a lot of damage quickly, and quitting before region. And that's just like a really cash grabby way for any champion to be built, first of all. Second of all, for it to be the final fight. So that's definitely something I dislike for these kind of fights. Any progress that you have made, let's say up until the final 10% where you have like your specific mission, should remain as your progress made. You should not deal with that kind of region, or basically you should never be forced into a situation where you enter this kind of boss fight and you can come out of it worse off than you began. So I think that is quite silly. And that entire unstoppable thing, I get it. Champion becomes unstoppable. That's part of the fight. That's part of the challenge. I do understand it. I just absolutely do not understand why the extended buff duration and why the need to class every single champion as champion of the universe where he gets extra buffs on. I think that it would be much more wiser to leave the buff duration as is, because then at least you could try and fight the fight with your regular different champions that can't nullify as unstoppable. And also that champion of the universe thing that goes to all champions also I think is very short-sighted, because that would encourage people not to use kind of like your best, your god tiers, whatever is listed in the champion, but use different kind of champions against him. But again, so I think that's just kind of very short-sighted, ill design where somebody didn't put much thought into it. So that is a point number 3 that mainly I have a really specific problem with. And I suppose the last and the most important point, or one of the most important points, is the 10% bit. The 10% bit is also, I think, far too specific. Like, to get those 5 dexterities, it's not an easy thing. It's definitely a skill kind of thing. Unless you have like a very easy cheese method how to deal with this, like She-Hulk or something, it's a very long kind of difficult process in order to get the 5 dexterities off, plus the fact that it might still be bugged or whatever. I think honestly they probably should have increased that to 10, but make sure that any progress you make throughout the fights is saved, kind of like, but as if he like has 10 persistent charges every time you dex, you remove 1, and then if you die, let's say when you removed 3 of them, he remains at 7, he starts the next fight at 7, so on and so forth. And so at least then you would have the sort of feeling that you're making progress. Then that means that eventually, so long as you're doing something right, you would get rewarded for the fight. Now in this case, you can go in, you can try your best 58 times, get 4 prowess, 3 prowess, 4 prowess, 2 prowess off him, but as long as you can't get the 5th one off, it's pointless, right? Because you're gonna be stuck. Like, that's kind of the situation we had against the Nameless Thanos fight. You had to intercept him in order to place armor breaks on him, and then you could deal damage for like a second, but any damage you dealt remained there. Like, so you could fail 52 times, but so long as you did it like 1 intercept, you landed 1 hit, you did 500 damage, you were making progress. Again, as a champion, if you're not able to do it fully, exactly what they ask you to do, you're done. You can spend 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 units, 50,000 units. If you physically can't do it, if you're not skilled enough, if you're tilted or whatever, then you're stuck. And you have no way of making progress unless you finish it all the way. So again, it's like what I have been talking about so much lately about pass-fail bases with Kabam, and I am extremely opposed to that kind of like node and that kind of champion design if you don't deal any damage unless X, Y, and Z. And this is exactly what it is. Against Nameless Thanos, you had a simple mission. You could land an intercept, you deal some damage so long as you can armor reckon you. That was it. And you could do it in 1 go, or you could do it in 89 goes with 1 intercept a piece or 1 armor break and a few damage. Here you can't do it so much. So anyways, I think that's pretty much it for the video. Aside from the last fact that also I think Thanos fight had better, it was the animations. We actually had an animation clip when he changed his stones, his stances. Champion does not. I understand why he does not, just because of his region, because he could frequently jump from one stance to another, and I can understand why they didn't include it, but at least some sort of like higher text highlight, something to indicate which attacks are unblockable or something of the sort to give us a bit more information during the fight would be appreciated. But anyway, so yeah, as its core, I think these two fights are extremely similar in terms of how they are built and what they're intended to do, and the tasks are quite similar as well. Champion is obviously harder, but I think Champion fails miserably due to the fact that he's placed behind a long path, due to the fact that he has huge region that you have to deal with, due to the fact that he is on pass-fail basis. There is no kind of like, I'm just gonna go and chip away and make a progress quite often on him, especially for last 10%. And yeah, due to the fact that he's extremely champion specific, whereas Nameless Thanos wasn't. Nameless Thanos was pretty much the best fight design I had seen in this game to date. Absolutely loved it, encourage it, do one like that every month or some special event. That's cool. Any champion could do that fight. All you need to do is practice, and you could make progress. You could chip away that fight, you could get it done. Now, stuff like champion, I think, is an absolute nightmare because it discourages you actually practicing and trying. It just encourages you spending simply by the fact that it's put behind a long path, simply because of the fact that you can't really chip away on the last 10%. It's pass-fail basis, and I think it's definitely a step in the wrong direction by Kabam in terms of monthly quest. I hope we do not see any fights like that again in Act 6. But one can only wish. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed me ranting, and yeah, today a bit different video. If you did enjoy it, hit that like button, hit that sub button, and I'm gonna see you guys soon.